Good evening. I am Debbie Randall, and I'm the academic counselor for students M through Z. Mrs. Bowles has A through L. And we have two people from Drury, and they are going to be talking about the FAFSA and what that means for seniors. But let's begin in prayer. The prayer I picked today is the Serenity Prayer. And we prayed this with the seniors as we were making decisions and talking about college. And I think it really talks to all of us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, grant me the courage to change the things I can change, the serenity to accept those that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. But God, grant me the courage not to give up on what I think is right, even though I think it is hopeless. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I'm going to hand this over to our guest.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Thank you for having us. Since I am 6 feet apart, I am going to go ahead and remove my mask. I think it'll make it easier for everybody to understand me. Welcome to everybody in the audience, as well as everybody that's watching us live and then maybe recorded later on. My name is Lindsay Tobin. I am the Director of Admission at Drury University, and soon you're going to get to meet Becky Ahrens. She is the Director of Financial Aid at Drury University. And though we are, of course, employees of Drury University, we came here tonight to talk about the FAFSA and to talk about scholarships and to talk about financial aid as a whole. So if you have questions, I don't want you to feel like you're just asking a Drury question, okay? So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. First off, I want to talk about paying for college. As an admissions counselor, that's probably the number one question that I hear. It's not about the residence halls. It's not about the classes. It really is, well, how am I going to pay for this? And so there's 3 ways that you can really finance your education. The first one is called past income. And so what that means basically is your savings. It can mean any investments that you have. It can also mean the 529 plans that you've put into place. Maybe when your now senior was a young 4-year-old at the time. Present income, that means financial aid, which could mean you're taking out some grants or other things that are going to come from financial aid. Becky's going to get more into that in a little bit. I'm just kind of setting the stage for her. Also, the payment plan. Most schools will offer a payment plan, and what that means is that you're paying while you're in college. So for Drury, for example, we have a 5-month payment plan per semester, or you can sign up for 4 or 3, I believe. There's a couple different setups. The main thing is you want to look at that information as soon as you get it from your son or daughter, and then visit with the business office to get signed up for that. Then after present income comes future income. That's where we're going to talk about student loans and parent loans. So anything that you're borrowing now to pay forward in the future. So let's talk a little bit about scholarships. Scholarships are what we love. First off, scholarships mean that you've earned them, and it's money that you don't have to pay back. Institutional scholarships are scholarships that come directly from that institution. So for example, if I'm going to give you an academic scholarship from Drury University, if you choose to go elsewhere, you can't use that scholarship elsewhere. You can only use it if you go to my institution, okay? You must apply and be admitted before you can receive any sort of institutional scholarships. So schools will have net price calculators on their website. So you can take a look at those and kind of get an estimate as to what you might qualify for, but no school is probably really going to tell you what you're going to get until you actually do apply and get admitted to the school. Then there are outside scholarships. So there are local and national companies out there that are willing to write it off and give out lots of scholarships to our seniors across the United States. community organizations, parent employers, and then a really good website to get onto is www.fastweb.com. Another good website as well, which I forgot to include it in on this, but I'll go ahead and mention it, the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. That's a local group, and if you go on there, it has a drop-down menu that you can actually select Springfield, and it will show all the local scholarships for the Springfield area, and that's a really great resource for students to have. Another little tip that I would suggest would be to go ahead and, if you set up an email account, like a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, but something outside of your school account, your Springfield Catholic School account, because what will happen as soon as you graduate from high school, that account is going to go away. Am I right? Normally once a student graduates from high school, the account goes away.
Yeah, they just.
Okay, so why I bring that up, Becky's going to go into this in a little bit more in detail, but so many of the things that you're going to be filling out for the FAFSA or for other important documents, you might not want it tied to that email. And here's my other little tip, is that once you start signing up for FastWeb and once you start signing up for some of these scholarship services, your box is going to become inundated with emails. So you might appreciate having a separate email. Just make it a joegoestocollege@gmail.com, something like that. But definitely check out those two. Fastweb.com is also a very good one. Check with your parents' employers. Check with them to see if they have any sort of tuition help for children. Sometimes they do, so it never hurts to ask. Okay, so we're gonna jump into financial aid a little bit. These are a couple of things that it's important to know the definition and the differences. So for grants are gifts of money that do not have to be repaid. They can be merit or athletic scholarships. They can be Pell, SEOG, Access Missouri. Some of those are going to come from the FAFSA, which we're going to talk about that. Some of those are going to be granted by the institution that you're applying to. However, most of those, and I will say this for Drury, we can't award more grants if we don't have your FAFSA on file. So you're going to hear Becky say this over and over and over. File the FAFSA, file the FAFSA, file the FAFSA. Even if you think you don't qualify for government aid, you still might qualify for other grants. And we can't give you those unless we have it on file. So those are grants. That's what you don't have to pay back. And again, they can come from the college. They can come from the state government, federal government, or from corporate and community organizations. Second one, loans. Loans are money that you borrow that have to be paid once you graduate from college. Some of those also you might be paying back while you're in college. So there's certain limitations. I don't know how much in detail we'll get into it, but certainly just know that loans are ones that you do have to pay back. So that's the difference between loans, grants. Work study. Work study is a guaranteed employment on campus where a student can earn money to pay for part of their tuition. You don't get the money unless you work. So you still have to apply for the job. You have to go through the job interview. Then you get the job. Then you have to show up, and work to earn the money. That is one portion of financial aid. Work study, I will mention though, however, that sometimes I will have students that say, well, work study is not on my packet. Work study normally work study is first come, first serve. We award it until we don't have any more funds. So that's why it's so important to apply and get admitted and file your FAFSA early so that we can get that awarded to you early. But I will say, if you're somebody that applied later, it doesn't mean that you can't get a job on campus. It just might mean you're not going to get work study. So you're still going to get paid, it's just not in a form of financial aid. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to hand it over to the expert. That's Becky Ahrens. She is our Director of Financial Aid. She is my go-to when I am like, I don't know what to do with this. So hand it over to her, and then we'll ask questions and be around to answer those later. Thank you.
Hi everybody. So like Lindsay said, you're going to hear me say this over and over, but really filing the FAFSA is the most important thing that you can do as part of your college search process. Maybe second to the application for admission. We want to make sure you get admitted, but we do encourage you to file the FAFSA because there are so many opportunities that come from that. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and I always want to highlight the word free there. It does not cost anything to file the FAFSA. There are organizations that will charge you money to file the FAFSA, but you do not have to pay anyone to file the FAFSA. I can help you, Lindsay can help you, anybody that offices at your respective schools can help you file the FAFSA. I also do share this little anecdote as a cautionary tale. We had a student a few years ago who called us and they said, oh my gosh, I'm just beside myself. It was a mom and a student, just beside themselves. They had filled out their FAFSA, they Googled it, filled out the FAFSA, put all their information in, student social security, parents' social security numbers, birth dates, address, how much the parents made on their taxes, what was on their W-2s, everything you could possibly need to steal somebody's identity. And they got to the last page of the FAFSA and it said, okay, thank you, please now, take this off, please now pay us $85. And they realized that they weren't actually on the .gov website, which is the FAFSA website. So please, please, please be very careful that you land on a .gov website when you're filing the FAFSA. If you Google it, I promise you the first one that comes up is not going to be a .gov, and you've just handed out your personal information to who knows. Very scary, so we don't want to do that. Always be sure that you are on a .gov website when you're filing the FAFSA. You can link to the FAFSA website probably from every college in the country's website, so if there are any questions about if you're at the real FAFSA website or not, that's a good way to get there. Studentaid.gov, like I said, that is the central resource for all financial aid information. Information about loans and grants, how to file your FAFSA, where to fill out your loan documents. It's a really comprehensive website with lots of good information. The FAFSA for next academic year, so your freshman year of college, was available as of October 1st. We have received some FAFSAs. We definitely have some early birds that are getting those in, and we want you to do that. We want you to file those FAFSAs as early as you can because there are some priority deadlines. The Missouri priority deadline is February 1st. If you are a Missouri resident and you're thinking about going to college in Missouri, even if it's the remotest possibility and the farthest thing from your mind right now, file your FAFSA before February 1st because that is the state deadline. It will probably take you 30 minutes to an hour to file a FAFSA, maybe the first time a little longer, a little toward the longer end. But really, it's not that painful. The main thing is don't be afraid of filing the FAFSA. Jump in, give it a shot. It's really not as scary as you might think it would be. But it does use your parent tax information and the student tax information if the student files to determine your financial need. If you don't file a FAFSA, you don't get need-based aid. So again, I'm going to say, please be sure and file your FAFSA. So the first step in filing the FAFSA is to get an FSA ID. Both the student and the parent do have to have an FSA ID because you both have to sign it. One parent has to sign it, not both. Just one parent has to sign the FAFSA with this FSA ID. The FSA ID allows you to sign electronically, which means FAFSA will process your information in 4 to 6 days, sometimes even sooner than that. You can, at the end of the FAFSA, say, yes, I want to print a page, sign it, and mail it in. Then you have to wait 4 to 6 weeks for someone at FAFSA to actually process that for you. So I definitely recommend that you file electronically and that you use an FSA ID to sign your FAFSA, if at all possible. And here again, we'll touch on something Lindsay said. Remember the email that you use to sign up for your FSA ID. If you sign up for your FSA ID using your school email and it gets turned off in June, well, what happens your sophomore year when you go to file the FAFSA and you can't remember what your password was? Where are they going to send a reset email to your high school email address that doesn't exist anymore? So be sure you're using an email that you are going to keep and have for a long time. When you set up that FSA ID and password, email yourself the password or write it down on a folder that you keep all your college stuff in. You're going to need that password again for both the parent and the student. So So I have a little video to show here that talks about the FSA ID, if we can get it to load. Whoops. Okay, it played just fine when we tested it earlier. Now it's not going to play. There's a great FSA ID video. It shows you, it's a little 3-minute video that walks you through how to set up the FSA ID. We'll talk a little bit more about the FSA's YouTube page. It's just a YouTube video, easy to find, easy to do. So we'll skip that for right now, but what you need to file your tax or file your FAFSA is your 2019 tax information. So the FAFSA always works out on 2 years out tax information. So for fall of 2021, if that's when you're going to college, you use your 2019 tax information. For fall of 22, you'll use your 2020 tax information. You'll need your parents' tax information, your tax return and W-2s. You'll also need the student's tax return if you file. If you don't, that's fine. And your W-2s if you had a job, because it will ask what your AGI was from your tax return. It will ask you what your earnings were, how much taxes you paid, a variety of questions about any deductions that you may have had. You can file the FAFSA with estimated tax information if your 2019 taxes aren't complete yet. And that happens most often if folks have a small business or a family business that they're doing taxes for. Sometimes they have extensions, they haven't gotten their taxes done yet. If you can finish those taxes up, but if not, you can use estimated information. My caution with filing estimated is your financial aid offer will also be estimated, and it will be as accurate as the information that you submitted on the FAFSA. So if you can get really, really close to what your taxes are going to be, probably you will get a very accurate financial aid offer. If you throw some darts at the wall for your financial aid or for your FAFSA about your income and your AGI, your financial aid offer from the schools that you're looking at will probably be very different as well. And again, you need that FSA ID for the parent and for the student. One thing that you can do to make the FAFSA simpler is to use the data retrieval tool. So it is a time-saving tool. I definitely encourage everyone to use it if they have the opportunity to. Basically, you have 2 choices on the FAFSA. You can type in all of your tax information one by one by one, and it will say on the FAFSA things like, go to Form 1040, line 13, enter that number here. So obviously a lot of room for error doing that, and it's just time-consuming and can be frustrating. The other option is to use the data retrieval tool from the IRS to import your 2019 tax information beautifully into your FAFSA. You don't even see it. It is only available if you've already filed your taxes. So again, if you filed your taxes, try to use that data retrieval tool. It just pulls all that information straight over from the IRS database. It's all accurate. You don't have to manually enter it or be looking up certain lines on your tax forms. Much easier if you have the opportunity. Okay, so we have another little video here about filing the FAFSA. I don't know if this one will play or not. Nope, it's not going to play either. But I'm glad I threw this slide in because this is both videos off of the FSA YouTube channel. There are some really great short videos on how to and what to do if you're having problems filing your FAFSA, setting up your FSA ID. Lots of really good information here that is really easily accessed. So please utilize that if you have the opportunity. So you have filed your FAFSA, you put all your tax information in, you used your FSA ID, you signed the FAFSA, you submitted it, you sent it to up to 10 colleges. Now what happens? So 3 things that will happen. 1, you'll get an immediate confirmation, usually within 60 seconds, that says, thank you for filing your FAFSA, we've received your information. Pretty short and sweet. The second thing that will happen is you will get a student aid report emailed to you, usually in 3 to 5 days. Again, that is going to go to the email that you use on the FAFSA, so be sure you're using an email that you're going to have access to regularly and for a long time. And then the third thing that's going to happen is that FAFSA will calculate for you an expected family contribution, an EFC. This is a word that you're going to hear very frequently, EFC. It's an indicator of the family's financial strength. It is not a number that is how much you have to pay to go to college. It just indicates the strength of the family's financial situation. So low EFC, low financial strength, high EFC, high financial strength in that household. That EFC is what tells us at the institutions what you're eligible for. Are you eligible for Pell? Are you eligible for an SEOG grant? Are you eligible for a subsidized or unsubsidized loan? If you want kind of a quick version of the FAFSA, you can always file the FAFSA Forecaster. That can be a helpful tool, especially if you have maybe a sophomore or junior and you're just starting to think about FAFSA and financial aid. It's like a FAFSA Lite, asks far fewer questions, but it's not a guarantee of anything. Just gives you kind of a snapshot of what your financial aid might be like. So like I said, your FAFSA will be sent to all the schools that you choose, up to 10. Can't send it to more than 10 in one transaction, and hopefully by the time you get around to sending your FAFSA, you maybe have your list narrowed down to 10 or less schools. That's still a pretty long list. Your EFC will be the same at all schools, so your family's financial strength doesn't change whether you're looking at OTC or Drury or Harvard. It doesn't matter. Your family's financial strength doesn't change. What will change is your financial need at each college. So a more expensive college, you'll have more financial need. A less expensive college, less financial need. We'll go through some examples of this in a minute that I think will help. So you'll receive a different financial aid offer at every school that you have been accepted to. It will have scholarships from that school, any federal or state aid that you might be eligible for, but it will be different at every school. Some schools will ask you to file what's called a CSS profile. Drury does not ask for this, but it's just additional financial information that's not captured on the FAFSA. So non-custodial parents, the value of your home or other assets, but like I said, it's not required at all schools. So again, talking about the EFC and need, financial need at each school is determined by subtracting the EFC from the total cost of attendance. So cost of attendance minus your EFC is your need. The greater the financial need, the more financial aid a student can potentially receive. So I've got a couple of examples here that will give you some working knowledge of cost of attendance and EFC. So I have two little girls at home, 3 and 5, and they really like Frozen. So if you've seen the movie, The Duke of Westleton, and they live in Arundel. So these are our two examples here. So at Westleton U, the cost of attendance is $17,000 a year. Your EFC is $5,000, so your need is $12,000. That cost of attendance minus your EFC is your need at that school. That $12,000 financial need at Westleton U. So at Westleton, you've been offered a $6,000 scholarship, a $3,500 subsidized loan, and a $2,000 unsubsidized loan. Your total aid there is $11,500. Well, over at Arundel, cost of attendance is much higher, $40,000. Your EFC, though, is still the same. It's still a $5,000 EFC because your family's household information didn't change, your income didn't change, still $5,000. So your financial need at Arundel is $35,000, much higher there because that cost of attendance is much higher. Well, as is often the case at more expensive schools, you get a bigger scholarship. So at Arundel, you get a $27,000 scholarship, you get $3,000 in work study, you're also offered $3,500 in subsidized loan and $2,000 in unsubsidized loan. So your total financial aid package there is $35,500. So when you hear college folks, whether they're admission counselors or your college counselors at your school, talk about getting more scholarships at more expensive schools, this is a great example of that. So you might get a much larger scholarship. Don't write a school off just because the price tag looks much bigger, because you don't know what you're actually going to be writing a check for. You might be writing a check for less at the more expensive school because you're going to get a bigger scholarship. But you have to go through the financial aid process to find out what you're really looking at and compare your apples to apples. So once you file the FAFSA, all of these are awards that could be received as a result of filing the FAFSA. It could be Pell Grant, SEOG grants, endowed scholarships from the schools that you are applying to, could be work study opportunities, the Access Missouri State Grant, subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans, a whole variety of things that can come as a result of filing your FAFSA. So again, please file your FAFSA, it's very, very important. Other resources, once you've exhausted all of those opportunities, Parent Plus loans, these are in your parents' names, these are not in the students' names, and mom and dad, even if your student doesn't finish college, you still have to pay these loans back. They are in your name, they cannot be transferred to your student. You do have to apply for those online every year, and again, at studentaid.gov, so that's that kind of one-stop shop website there for you. There are also alternative loans. Alternative loans are a little bit different than Parent Plus loans. Parent Plus loans are federal loans, Alternative loans are private loans from banks, credit unions. When you think of places like Wells Fargo or Sallie Mae, those are kind of some of the popular ones, but there are tons of student loan lenders. Everybody's eligibility for those alternative loans will be different. It's kind of like shopping for a mortgage or a car loan. You want to shop around, you want to compare interest rates and repayment terms, because there are just such a variety of lenders and loan products out there. And then again, to highlight the community and corporate scholarships, keep applying for those. Treat it like it's a part-time job. Once a week, sit down, fill out an application, write an essay. You'll be surprised how many essays you can reuse for those scholarship applications. I see students a lot that will kind of say, oh, that's just a $100 scholarship. I don't really want to apply for that. I'm not going to waste my time on that. Or it's just a $200 scholarship, or it's just a book scholarship. I'm telling you right now, if somebody walked up to me and offered me $100 to write some words on a piece of paper, I would absolutely do that. No question in my mind. That's pretty good per hour pay. So you think maybe you spend an hour or two on your essay and filling out the form and somebody's going to give you $100, you just made $50 an hour. That's pretty good per hour pay, like I said. So don't discount those small scholarships, those community scholarships. Apply for all of those. Designated time every week. Sunday afternoon from 2 to 4, you're going to work on your scholarship applications. Just put it on the calendar, make a date with yourself, you got to do it. You also want to start applying now, because some scholarships have October 1st, November 1st, December 1st scholarship deadlines, and I see fewer students applying for those because they're not really in the mindset of how am I going to pay for college yet. They're in the mindset of where am I going to go for college, and the how am I going to pay for it comes down the road a little bit. So be sure you're applying for those scholarships right from the beginning. Again, different colleges will meet different amounts of your financial need because different scholarships and different federal and state aid might be available at each college. Your full financial need may or may not be met at every college, and that's why we say you have to compare apples to apples. So when you get those financial aid offers, sit down with Lindsay or whoever your admission counselor is. Make yourself an Excel spreadsheet and compare apples to apples. What will I pay here? What will I pay here? Just because you're getting a larger scholarship somewhere doesn't mean you'll pay less. Just because you're getting a smaller scholarship somewhere doesn't mean you'll pay more. So it really varies from student to student and from school to school. You really have to compare apples to apples. What are you actually going to write a check for? So also think about not just cost, what is the fit and what is the value that you're getting. If you have your heart set on being an architect, let's say architecture, because Drury has architecture and it's one I'm familiar with. If you have your heart set on being an architect and you go to a school because you think, oh, this is not very costly, I got a big scholarship here, but they don't have an architecture program, it's probably not the right fit. It might not be a great investment for you. So you have to really think about what's going to be the right fit, what's going to be the right value. Just because it's the best deal doesn't necessarily mean it's the right place for you to be. I throw this in as a bonus slide. 1 out of every 3 FAFSAs will be selected for verification. It's a process kind of like being audited on your taxes, only you just get to work with me and not the IRS. So I'm much easier to work with, I think. But like I said, 1 out of every 3 is automatically selected for verification. It does not mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean you made an error or you're in trouble or anything like that. It's just the government's way of putting the burden on the institutions to make sure the information on your FAFSA is accurate. So if you are selected for verification, your school will ask you to fill out some forms or maybe provide copies of tax returns or W-2s. Not anything too painful, and your school will help you do that. But you do have to submit those forms before we can process any of your financial aid. So please watch your email carefully. I will also say, once you have decided on a school, start watching your university email as well. So at Drury and at every other school, just like here at your high school, we're bound by those federal education right to privacy laws, those FERPA laws, and we can't disclose any information to anyone but the student. Doesn't matter if mom and dad are paying for it. It doesn't matter if the student's only 18 or they just moved in. Once you have enrolled in college, we cannot share that information with anyone except the student unless they provide a release for us. So if the student wants to provide a release and says, yeah, tell mom everything, it's fine, go ahead and tell mom everything. Mom and dad, you might want to work with your student and make sure that actually happens. We talk about that a lot at orientation because it's not fun for the parent or for us when they call and they say, well, what's my student's financial aid and what's the balance and what's this and how much is my next payment? And we say, I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything because I don't have a release. So very, very important that you get that filled out if you want to share information and have mom and dad help you with your financial aid. Again, if the financial aid office requests documents from you, you have to turn those in before you'll get your financial aid. We don't just eventually go away if you ignore us. What happens is eventually you lose your eligibility for financial aid. So it's very important that if we do have any requests for you, if we send you updates or we tell you that we need something, it's because we really, really need it. I don't ask for folks' tax returns because I think it's fun to go home and read them at night. We ask for those because we have to have them. So very important to be responsive to the financial aid office. Make friends with your financial aid officers. We really are the good guys. You know, we're trying to give you a whole lot of money and to help you pay for your college. So make friends with your financial aid office, folks. Feel free to call and ask questions. You know, that's why we're here. That's job security for us. We're happy to answer those. The last thing that we want is for a student to come in and say, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this, or I don't understand. What do you mean I have loans? That's a bad sentence for us here in the financial aid office. So we want you to ask questions. We want you to be very involved in the process. Know where the financial aid office is. Know how to get a hold of the financial aid office and ask any questions that you have for sure. All right. This is our contact information. I invite questions, even if you're not planning on attending, Drury, you're welcome to call and ask me questions, and I can try to help you as best I can. That said, sometimes processes are a little bit different at every school, so it's probably a good idea to start with the school that you're looking at. But again, I'm happy to entertain questions if I can help. We are in Bay Hall on campus. If you're around Springfield and you want to come by, you can email us, you can call us. There is also a really great 800 number for FAFSA. So if it is 2 a.m. and you are filing your FAFSA and you have absolutely no idea how to answer a certain question, or you're not sure what parent information to put, you can call the FAFSA Helpline, and they are really, really good at being able to walk you through and answer questions that may seem like they're out of the ordinary. I guarantee there's nothing they haven't heard. So definitely take advantage of that 800 number. They are really, really great to help students and families get through that FAFSA. All right. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to entertain those.
So the FAFSA account, is that just good for like one time, or do you have to do that every year? Or
Good question. So the question is, do you have to do the FAFSA every year? You do have to complete a new FAFSA every year that your student wants to receive aid. So when you file this FAFSA for 21-22, that is only good for fall 21, spring 22, probably summer 22 at most schools. So then October 1st of 2021, you'll be able to file the 22-23 FAFSA. That's hard to even think about. That's so far out. But every year, October 1st, it opens for the next academic year. You do need to file the FAFSA every year. Good question.
is there only like one account though, but you just have to file every year?
Yes.
Or different accounts every year?
Yes, once you sign up for an FSA ID, you'll log back into your FAFSA account every year, and it will have, you know, if you log in mid-year, you'll probably see this year's and next year's FAFSA, and then you just pick whichever one you want to file. Once you have filed a FAFSA, the great thing about having that FAFSA account is that a lot of your information rolls over from year to year, name and address and some of those things, and then you just update your financials. Makes it a lot faster to file in future years, especially if you use the data retrieval tool. All right. Hearing no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all so much. We appreciate all of you tuning in and appreciate you being here, and we're happy to help if there's something we can do. Thanks, Sid.
We just want to thank Lindsay and Becky for coming, spending the evening with us from Drury. And if you have any questions, please feel free to watch this over and over, or call the academic office, and or you can call over at Drury or the FAFSA 800 number. Thank you guys. Have a good evening.